The art market right now is garbage. You're looking for work. You're an artist, you just got out of school, and I give you two options. The first one is this big client, popular company, let's say Disney, is gonna offer you $1,500 for one illustration. That's pretty good. That's above average for most freelance work. You're like, that sounds great. Let's do that. But what's option two? You get to make whatever you want. No art director standing over you, on your own timeline. You can make it for your portfolio, you can make it for yourself, you can make furry kink art, you can make whatever you want. And over the course of the next year, you're gonna make 3 to 4 times that original $1,500. What's the catch? Well, you have to do a little marketing for yourself. A company that's gonna pay you $1,500 for an illustration understands your value, and they're gonna market that for you, and they're gonna take that extra profit, right? That's how business works. But us as artists, we can market ourselves. We're already doing the hard part. We're making the art. That's the thing that's going to market ourselves already. And you're like, yeah, I don't want to deal with that. I just want $1,500, one and done, easy in, easy out. Maybe it'll be a great experience. But maybe they sucked your literal soul out of your body. That's the gamble you take. But if I was just starting out, I know which one I would prioritize. Being more independent as an artist is going to put you in a much better situation when those clients come along. Just having a great portfolio works on some people. That's oftentimes how a lot of people get hired, obviously. But also being able to prove that your work is popular and marketable and sellable and that people are buying it is a lot of times what gets companies' attentions. They're like, oh, I didn't like your work, but it looks like a lot of people did, so now I want to hire you. I had a lot of trouble getting hired right out of college, even though my ego told me that my portfolio was super good. Nobody wanted to hire me. But once I started doing really well at in-person shows, I was getting some of those companies that I had applied to back in college coming up to my table and being like, oh my God, I love your work. We'd really like to work with you. This is something that happens at almost every single show that I attend now. And now I have the option to say no or yes, depending on the project. Now, I had this exact decision to make last year. I was offered a lot of client work. Typically, I say no to client work and I just do my own thing, but I really felt like I needed to legitimize myself as an artist. I hadn't taken any freelance work in a long time, and my resume was looking a little blank in the last couple of years. So Disney approached me and offered me to work on the Lorcana project. I accepted, and the team was absolutely wonderful. I loved working for them. However, I made a lot less money last year than I did the year before. I have one card out that's public and I can share with you. This one, I was paid $1,500 for this art. I don't own this art. I can't do anything with it. I will never make another penny off of this art. And that's fine. I agreed to that up front. I knew what I was agreeing to. But this card took me almost a month to do in all the approval stages that are involved with Disney. But let's compare this to one of my personal pieces that I did just for myself. So I did this illustration in 2020 during the pandemic in an afternoon in a couple hours. I put it on my online shop. I didn't have a very big following at the time. I think it was about $20 a print. It was an 8x10. It was pretty small. Not the most impressive illustration, very basic. Over the course of that year, I made $1,321. So we're still not to that $1,500, but I made this in the course of an afternoon. I probably could make 5 or 6 of these in the same time it took me to make that Gizmo suit illustration for Disney. That being said, the next year rolls around. On online sales, I made $1,898 off of this illustration. Shows start back up in the beginning of August, and over the course of those 4 or 5 shows that I did in the last couple months of 2021, I made over $2,200 off of this illustration. 2022 comes along. Online, I made $1,958. I will say my online following at this time had grown a little bit, so my online sales might have been inflated. However, my in-person events, where an online following doesn't really determine whether your sales are high or not, I made $4,060 off of this single illustration through the course of that year. 2023 comes along. I make $1,022 off of it. At in-person events, I'm starting to not like this illustration very much. It's really showing that it's an older illustration. It doesn't fit my brand. It's not looking as good as some of my newer work. So I'm not bringing it to every show, but to the shows that I did bring it to, I still made $1,880. I would like to also say, in 2020, this illustration performed pretty well compared to my other work. Now fast forward to 2024, I actually just recently discontinued this piece because it is one of my lowest performing pieces at this point. And that's not because it's performing worse, it's because all my new work is performing better. I'm still selling it in my online shop, just whatever stock I have left. So far I've made $560 this year online. Once that stock runs out, I probably won't restock it. But you can see over the course of the last 4 years, I've made a lot more than $1,500 off of this one illustration that took me an afternoon to make. And I made a lot of illustrations in random afternoons in 2020 during the pandemic, and a lot of their profit breakdowns look like this. So I've made almost 10 times the amount I would have on that original commission over the lifespan of this random illustration. And this isn't even one of my best sellers. I have prints that perform far better than this one. I also offer a lot more designs. Typically, I offer about 50 different designs at any given time. I'm making revenue from each one of those illustrations. So taking the yearly revenue from this one print and then timing it by 50 is approximately what I'm making per year as an artist from independent sources. And this is how I'm able to avoid being reliant on any given client and the work that they may or may not offer me. $1,500 one and done, or the potential for like $6,000 a year. And then the next year, and then the next year, and then the next year, and then all the other years after that, as long as you want to sell that work, because it's yours. As an artist, if somebody is willing to pay you for a commission, and they're going to pay you, let's say $1,500, in most cases they're a business, and they are intending to make a lot more money off of that artwork for whatever it's being used for, then they're paying you. That's just good business. Now, us as artists, we need to realize that. We need to understand that our artwork is worth more than that they're paying us. This isn't something to be mad about or not take those jobs when you want to take those jobs, but understanding that your potential is a lot greater than that $1,500. I think with the job market being so volatile for artists right now, it is super important to diversify your income. So my honest suggestion would be to do both. You want to make those relationships, you want to make those connections with those big companies, so you have them as an option. You also want to be self-sufficient in some sort of way. Making the art is the hard part, as we have all of these pieces of artwork to promote ourselves with. And those will help you grow your online following or your online shop, and then that'll help you make sales over on that end as well. And then you won't even have to leave your house. Again, if you're a more established artist and you can negotiate your contracts, not every company is willing to negotiate contracts, even with more established artists, but some are. Maybe you can get print rights or whatever, and then that's a great situation where you've been paid for that work up front, and then you can market it and sell it yourself as well. About 60% of my time last year went to freelance work, but only contributed to about 20% of my income. I did far more work for them than I did for myself, and I still made way more through my personal work than I did through my client work. If $1,500 is enough for you to live off and you want to draw Disney art or whatever company that's interested in you, that's awesome. After all, I do both, and I enjoy working for them, even though it is by far more stressful and less profitable job than doing my own personal work. If you saw my income breakdown from last year, you know I made about $240K primarily on independent work. This year, because I took on way more client work and had less time to make personal work, I made just under $200K this year. Again, I make a great living, nothing to complain about. I would attribute that 40 less K almost directly to taking on client work instead of doing my own personal work. It just took up so much time out of the year that I couldn't focus on other things that were way more profitable. These are just the statistics that I'm seeing after, reviewing my taxes for the year and understanding where money was coming from and where money wasn't coming from. Understanding the potential that my own personal work might have financially, it's going to be really hard for a company to convince me to take on a project that I'm not passionate about, especially if they're not going to offer me like 10K plus illustration, which isn't very realistic for most companies. Sure, there are jobs out there, mostly in advertising, that will pay like $20,000, $30,000 in illustration, but these opportunities are really rare and very unlikely for somebody who's just entering the art industry to be offered. Someone with literally no experience can start selling their own personal work at any time for a profit and not have to worry about navigating whether a client is going to hire them or not and figuring out the best way to negotiate a pay rate.
What up, gang? Make sure you buy all the Inkwell merch.
I don't want this video to be like, you can become a millionaire as an artist overnight or anything like that, but also understanding that it is far more viable these days to live comfortably as an artist, doing your own personal thing, than it was even a few years ago, even in spite of the declining job market for artists.